I would like to apologise in advance for the low quality of this podcast recording. I'd also like to warn listeners that the following interview does contain profanity. Hello, my name is Jambariki, and joining me for an interview is Diamanda Hagen, who is best known as a film critic for a show called Hagen Reviews on the website thatguyoftheglasses.com. While on camera for her reviews, she takes on this flamboyant and sinister role of a supervillainess known as the Lecher Bitch. Thank you for joining me, Diamanda.
Thank you for having me on.
So, you grew up in Northern Ireland at a time of terrorist violence. What was your childhood like in this atmosphere?
Yeah, I grew up in Derry. I was born in '83, so I remember the tail end of the bad years of the Troubles. So my earliest memories of my hometown were barricades, soldiers, random parts of the city not being there the next day. Anytime I saw my hometown on the news, it was usually on fire. There was riots. I remember that there were sections of the city you literally couldn't get into because it was there was police blockades there, and you needed special permission to go through them. The police, even today, the police stations have like massive armored doors. It's quite an interesting place to grow up in.
How would you say it's affected you as a person as you've grown up?
Possibly made my humor a bit darker. It's definitely made me more blasé about quote unquote terrorism than a lot of other people. But that's what happens when you grow up in a place which has a lot of something. I expect Californians are very blasé about earthquakes. I expect people from Kansas are are more blasé about tornadoes and the danger that they pose than say someone from New York City. It's if you grow up with something, it's just accepted. It's part of your life. So I think that's how it's affected me.
What was school like for you?
When I went to primary school, how to describe it? When I went to primary school, the integrated schools hadn't really come into Northern Ireland, and integrated in Northern Irish terms means Catholics and Protestants together in a school because, they're exciting like that. So the first 7 years of my schooling, I was at a government-run school, which was quote-unquote a Protestant school. Anywhere else in the UK would be referred to just as a government normal school, which everyone technically goes to. But in Northern Ireland, it's separated off that Catholics go to their own schools and then everyone else goes to the other one. So it was referred to as a Protestant school, though technically it wasn't. Then for secondary school, I went to Derry's first integrated secondary school, and there was slightly more variety of people there.
How did other students at your school treat you?
I wasn't exactly very popular, if that's what you mean. Because unusual for someone growing up in Northern Ireland, I'm not actually any stripe of Christian, and I've never been. So I was one of the few I was one of the few ones that didn't religiously have a side in the whole Troubles thing. So in some ways, I was like an outsider looking in, but only in some ways.
So after school, did you attend university or college?
Yeah, went to a college in Derry, and after that went to Stafford, University in Stafford in England. Then came back after then, and I'm currently in Northern Ireland again.
What did you study?
College, I was studying moving image and sort of film and stuff, and then in university I moved over to production technology. I have a BSc in film production tech, which means that I technically I could be hired as a professional camera operator or editor or lighting person or anything, but most of those things I'm not stupendously good at. Editing I'm quite good at. The lighting and camera I'm passable at, but I definitely wouldn't call myself pro level. But I managed to pass a degree in it.
At what point did you gain an interest in exploitation films and trash cinema?
I don't know. Probably because growing up, I never got a chance to watch films like that when I was a child. So the Forbidden was interesting to me, and whenever I got the chance to do it myself, to decide what I wanted to look at, I got interested in that sort of thing. and to this day I'm interested in seeing stuff that I'd never seen before.
So what is it about exploitation films that you really enjoy?
They're a lot less generic. Mainstream films are made to certain formulas, and to a certain extent all film is, but, well, almost all film. But exploitation films are a lot less formulaic. Almost anything can happen in an exploitation film, and I really, really appreciate that.
What inspired you to start your own review series on the internet?
I'd got my BSc in film production technology, and anytime I tried to get anything off the ground, it never really worked. I managed to win an award for a screenplay that I wrote that never was produced. I was nominated for an award for a play I wrote, but nothing ever went anywhere. So, and then I was introduced to the Nostalgia Critic, and I just figured I could do that. That's the sort of thing that with my technology and with my ability I could do. And so I gave it a go, having never seen like a so-called evil reviewer. So I decided to do that. Instead of sitting down in front of a camera, I stood in front of a camera. I wore crazy makeup. I changed the lighting and the look of the thing, anything I could to make it look different from other people's stuff, and decided to give it a go. And apparently I can do it to some degree.
You have said that you wanted your on-screen supervillain character to be covered up in makeup to hide your identity. Is there any reason why you didn't want to be recognised on the internet?
Oh yeah, that was one of the many reasons. Basically, I wanted to minimize the amount of connection between me and the person doing the thing, because I didn't want to. I just like having my own. I like having vestiges of anonymity. And it's the same. It's hard to explain. There's a lot of good things about sort of doing sort of things for the internet, but there's also, negative things to it. So in my own way, I was trying to maximize one while minimize another.
I see what you mean. Now, before you started Hagen Reviews, did you have any experience in acting?
Yeah, I'd done some plays. I'd appeared in like a couple of university people's short films. I'd appeared in like a music video that I'd done. Little things. But I actually, to take my sort of anonymity thing a little bit further, I originally did not want to appear in the show at all. I just wanted to write and edit it. However, no one else that I knew would actually play the part of Hagen, so I kind of had to.
When you uploaded the first ever episode of Hagen Reviews, what kind of reaction were you expecting?
I had no idea. I was hoping for some sort of, people to notice it, which they kind of didn't. It took me a long time to get noticed while doing for doing these reviews. Like, it took me about 10 episodes in and about 8 months in for me to get noticed even on the That Guy with the Glasses forum. It took me another 8 to 10 months to get in for That Guy with the Glasses. I put up episode after episode and was pretty much ignored. So, but that's what happens to a lot of people who do this, and people give up. I didn't, which might have been foolish on my part, but it eventually paid off.
How has That Guy with the Glasses helped your review series?
Well, before I got signed on there, my average review show, my movie reviews, which was my most popular stuff generally, would get about 300 hits. It's a lot more than that now. Definitely not as big as big players on That Guy with the Glasses or in the internet reviewing world in general. I'm definitely not a big player. I'm very, very niche, but I got more exposure. I got more hits from my views. My videos are watched more often, and perhaps most interestingly, I don't seem to be able to go to a nerdy, geeky convention anymore without being recognized by at least one person. It's expected at something like MagFest, but I went to the Grand Masquerade in September of 2011 down in New Orleans. Walked into a hotel and was recognized. I went to a geeky convention in Belfast last summer, and I was recognized by about 5, 6 people and ended up spending most of the day talking to fans. It's quite odd. You know, for small amounts of time, I can be a celebrity. It's a bit weird.
How do you feel about your fame?
In many ways, it's a very good form of celebrity because it doesn't get, I don't have it enough that it gets old and boring. It's not like, say, I'm not going to get, it's not often that I get recognized, and it's usually just in geeky sort of surroundings. So I have to literally go to a convention or something and probably get recognized. I'm not going to have people camping out in my house or whatever. But it's at the same time, I'm not big enough that if I go to a convention, people are always after me. Like, I could walk around MagFest and not get bothered by people for like maybe half hour, an hour, which is really nice too. So I got when it comes to exposure at events, I've got a really nice mix. I got the feeling that if I was, say, Doug or Lewis or Noah or any of those guys or James Rolfe, I don't think I would go to conventions for fun because you would be on 24/7. You would never get any time to yourself. You would not get to hang out with your friends. You would simply be performing for your fans, which is it's a fine thing to do. But I expect that's why Doug in particular doesn't go to MagFest, because it's not fun to go to a convention if you're going to be working all the time.
Have you ever had a scary encounter with a fan?
No, not that I recall. I think it's possibly because I intimidate my fans. I'm apparently quite scary, so no, I've never had a scary thing with a fan. I've never had a stalker, nothing like that.
Now, to me, the character of Electra Bitch is like a reincarnation of the late drag queen Divine. Would you say that Divine's characters have been an influence on the Electra Bitch?
I have never heard anyone compare Hagen to Divine. Oh. Last time I was over visiting my wife in Pikesville, which is just outside of Baltimore, I discovered there was a museum in Baltimore which actually has a 12-foot tall statue of Divine in it, and we never got to go, but it's just reminded me I really want to see it. But Divine was not an inspiration for the character at all. Actually, it's all in the full name of the character, Diamanda Grace Jones Hagen. Diamanda Gallus is how the way that the character's voice came out was inspired. She has an incredible vocal range. She'll go from screeches to sort of moaning to really highs to really lows, and so that's what I try to do in my play the character. Nina Hagen is a German 80s, though she's still going, sort of glam punk singer, and she has very, very, very interesting looks visually, so she inspired how Hagen looks, and general attitude was inspired by Grace Jones.
By any chance, have you seen any film starring Divine, though?
Oh yes, I've seen much of John Waters' his oeuvre, so I'm familiar with Divine. Now that you mention it, I could definitely see some little similarities between Hagen and Divine. Owen Citizen from That Guy with the Glasses likes to say that Hagen sounds like a cross between Mrs. Doubtfire and Captain Janeway, which is rather another funny description for the character.
What has been your proudest achievement since you set up Hagen Reviews? Honestly, well, met my wife through the show because she started out as a fan, but the single thing I'm most proud of, someone left a message on one of my, because I occasionally review Rapture movies, and someone left a message saying that they had gone from being a fundamentalist, Rapture-believing extremist Christian to being a moderate Christian because, as a direct result of my reviews, that I'd pointed out the absurdities and the horrific ethics of it, and they stopped believing that because of it. That's probably the single best thing that came out of my reviews. The second best is similarly related. I had a review called International Guerrillas for this Pakistani film, which is all about glorifying terrorism, and there's flying Korans and God melting people. And I did a review of it, and a guy who's actually from Pakistan sent me a long message explaining that
he was incredibly impressed with the fact that I knew so much about Islam, that I was treated the subject so well, and I thought I was quite proud of that. I don't actually set out to use kid gloves on any subject, let alone religion, and but to have someone saying that that I someone who was directly affected by it was very impressed with it. It was touching.
So would you say that changing people's beliefs or opinions is rewarding in a sense?
Oh, having an impact is. Like with the second guy, I didn't impact his views any. It was just I found he was just very impressed with it, and I found that touching. But having in changing someone's beliefs or views through not deliberately doing so, but having that effect, and from your point of view, in making their beliefs a little bit more moral, I think anyone would think that is a good thing. Obviously we all have different ideas of what's moral and what constitutes an improvement, but if someone else changes their views to something that you view as more moral as a side effect of something that you did that you weren't intending to do, I think almost anyone would view that as a good thing, just for themselves.
Now, your show often features cameos from Diamanda's minions, which are described as creatures that she created in vats that she cruelly tortures. What made you come up with the idea of the minions?
The minions started out as a one-gag thing back in the Memory Run review. It was just a one-off joke. Hagen had said a bad joke, someone had jumped in and beat her over the head for saying a bad joke, and then they had this idea, just two minions who screamed, "Oh, you killed the mistress, you're the mistress now." And then the person attempts to take over the show. Hagen comes back and kills the person, and the person's body is dragged out, and Hagen screams, "Burn that." Now, this episode hasn't turned up on That Guy with the Glasses yet, but it is one of my strongest episodes from my early show. But the few people who watched the show, who left comments, they loved the minions. So now, by that time, I had got up to writing about episode 10, so I reverse engineered episodes 4 to 9, to include minion skits. I went back and I inserted them because they were so popular and because it was so much fun, and because it let me have an extended cast, which no one else at that point I'd seen doing that. So I really it's hard to describe exactly where they came from. It's just I already had the masks there, one-off joke, ran out, and it became popular enough that you couldn't really imagine the show without them now.
So what would you say makes a good critic?
I don't know if by its nature there can be a good or a bad critic. All you can do is say what you think, and other people are going to decide whether they agree or not, and therefore whether it's good or bad or not. It's an entirely personal thing. I don't do video essays. I don't generally talk about the artistic subtext of films. When it comes to how I do my show, it's very, very internet review show traditional, except for the visual elements and the extraneous stuff that's attached to it, such as the minions and the supervillainy things. It's basically explain what's going on, make joke about it, talk about it, replace music. It's extremely traditional, and I maintain there are a lot of people who do this who are much better than I am.
Do you have any favourite critics that inspire your writing style? Or comedians?
I have no idea who directly inspired my writing style, or comedians or anything, or my style of comedy, or how I do my show. I just unlike some people who are doing this on the I suppose higher level, as in they're more noticed. I watch a lot of other review shows. Because I'm a fan of a lot of people who do it, and there's no way that can't affect me. So, but I can't think of any way how they do it. I'm guessing it's primarily subconscious. But I watch I'm looking forward to the Nostalgia Critic coming back. I watch Owen Citizen. As far as I'm concerned, he's the best person at this job. Nostalgia Chick, Welshie, Count Jacula. My wife, the Omega, whenever she puts out videos, they're usually good. Rantasmo, Foldable Human, Spoonie. There's and more beyond. There's a lot of people who I watch, and I think they're all brilliant. And if I could be as good as them, then I try harder to do that.
Some of your show's episodes feature running stories. What would you say is the key to effectively combining a narrative with a review?
I honestly don't know. I just tend to either if it's a series long storyline, then I tend to sort of put stuff in just at the start and the end, or the end. If it's a story inside a review, I just pop it in almost at random. The most random sort of way that I've done that is probably the Blackbeard's Ghost review, where I had this whole running idea that Hagen had suffered some sort of head injury and was slowly going insane while the review was happening. Unfortunately, I pretty much hit a wall with what I could think of to do with that about just over halfway through, so I sort of cured it about halfway through the episode and then just ignored it for the rest of it, which I'm sure when it comes to structure that is a terrible thing to do, but I couldn't think of anything else to do with it.
Now, you mainly review obscure and strange films that most people may not have heard of. How did you end up finding these bizarre titles?
Honestly, all in very different places. For instance, my 50th episode, Cockhammer. Sorry, no, Nixon, Hogan, Smoke Christmas, sorry. That's by a director called Kevin Strange. I got a copy of his entire back catalogue after a friend of mine ordered them for me. After he sort of became friends-ish with Kevin Strange, after I introduced him to the movie Cockhammer, which Kevin Strange had done, which I heard about via Cracked.com. It was just mentioned in a Cracked article. They all come from. I find them in very different places, though. I will obsessively, if I can find somewhere that's selling cheap DVDs, look to see what sort of interesting stuff I can find, stuff that I'd never heard of, just to see if stuff's reviewable or not. It means I watch a lot of films which are turned out to be not up to the grade for their show, but I review a lot of interesting. I watch a lot of interesting ones that are. They all really come from different places.
Your show also features a supporting character called Alistair, Homeless Devasted. What was your inspiration behind this character?
Complete total rip-off of the Bum. I just intended to do a one-off episode, which was like an English version of the Bum, who was a theatre person who reviewed Romeo and Juliet, and that was it. However, when editing it, I noticed that the character that I'd done, unlike the Spoonie Bum or Linkar's version of the Bum, is not just a note-for-note rip-off of the Bum, but I'd actually changed quite a lot of stuff more than I'd realized, from the way that the character acts, to obviously what he reviews, to just I felt that enough had changed that it could be an independent character, though definitely they are a rip-off of the Bum. Though they are by far the most far removed from the Bum that I have seen on an internet show, because there was a time when everyone was doing rip-offs of the Bum, and usually for one or two jokes. Like Spoonie killed his off during I think it was his Final Fantasy X review, and but Alistair's the furthest removed from the character, shall we say. The second furthest is probably the Cinema Snob's version of the Bum, who is literally just a homeless guy is not funny at all.
You've done a lot of crossovers with other internet critics. Is there anyone in particular that you would love to do a crossover with? Someone who haven't worked with yet?
Crossovers are a bit weird because they never quite turn out the way you expect them to, and they're fun to do. Yeah, there are people I like to do crossovers with. Um, Two, well, I know I've talked to several people about doing crossovers, who I've never done crossovers with, such as Linkara, Cinema Snob, and Welshie. Um, so are they included in the list, or does it have to be someone who I've never even talked to about doing it with?
Anyone at all that you've never done with? Anyone?
Okay, well, there's those three. I'd like, I would love for our sort of ideas to sort of come to fruition for that. Um, I wouldn't mind doing one with the Nostalgia Chick, Rantasmo, Count Jacula. There's a hell of a lot of good people. Basically, if I think someone's good, I wouldn't mind doing a crossover with them.
Now, recently you had the chance to work with Doug Walker, who plays Nostalgia Critic, in a crossover. What was it like meeting the person that inspired the template for Hagen Reviews?
Well, okay. I arranged this crossover. I asked him about doing it, the heavy metal review, whenever I knew that I'd been told that, To Boldly Flee was happening and the critic was ending. I was not at the shoot, obviously, and actually, you weren't supposed to find out about it unless you were at the shoot. So I'm not saying who told me, but I was informed. So I went to Doug basically and asked him to do a crossover with him for heavy metal, because ever since I first saw his show, and that was that was the Batman and Robin review. That's the film I wanted to see him review, because I love heavy metal and I wanted to see his take on it. Now, I suggested doing the crossover because I didn't think he'd accept it. However, what I thought would happen was he'd say no, and then maybe he might think, but heavy metal, that might be a good episode to do before I end the show. Do. But then he said yes, and I was fucking terrified and panicking. And I was like, what the fuck? He said yes, and then, because he was deeply editing To Boldly Flee at the time, I had to write the first draft of the script, and what made it even worse was because he was so busy with the editing, he wasn't even able to take notes for my first draft. So I literally had to write the first draft of the script by myself, and then he had to edit it to make any changes that he wanted. So that was incredibly daunting. It turned out okay. He didn't change he didn't like completely retool my script from the ground up. He kept a lot of stuff in there the same as it was. So I'm quite proud of that episode, although my camera quality is terrible.
You also run a review series called Twatty Who, a show that critiques the episodes of Doctor Who that you didn't enjoy. What inspired you to create this review series?
It was the Twatty Who reviews. It was like my Bone Kickers. It was reviews. It was just a chance for me to do a review show that did not require me to do two camera stuff, because the two camera stuff is a pain to edit. It's a pain to film because I have to put the makeup on, because I gotta get the room set up. I gotta have all of the other the actors who play minions and stuff. I gotta have someone behind the camera. So it allowed me to do more episodes than just the ones that I filmed for the regular Hagen reviews. And I did the Twatty Who because I have shit to say about Doctor Who. And my approach to the show was in the name, although a lot of people seem to miss that. I am being a twat in the show. I'm sort of just loudly and horribly stating my real life views, but I'm saying them in a much more brutal way than I might actually feel them. It's the show. It's like the unrestrained id of a fan thrown on Doctor Who.
Which would you say are your most controversial reviews that you've made?
Nice you said reviews, because I recently finished a trilogy of reviews looking at three films by Bill Zabub. The first episode was had to be taken down from Blip. The second, and because of the name of the film, I'm sure it's the name of the film. The second episode started someone demanded I take down the review because it was insulting to that the movie was offensive. Not the review was offensive, the movie was offensive. So I think those two, quite possibly. That was Forgive Me for Raping You and Zombie Christ.
Has any set piece or scene from an exploitation film ever made you feel sick, or would you say that you have a stomach made from steel?
Don't know if any scenes from an exploitation film has made me feel sick per se. At least not that I can really recall. I mean, while doing the show, my sort of what I can handle has gone up exponentially. Like when I did the first season, I watched Ilsa for the first time while writing my notes for the script for my review of Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS, and I found the film extremely difficult to watch. But then, 3 seasons later, I do a review of Slaughtered Vomit Dolls, which is 70 minutes of just violence, sex, dissonant noise, voiceover, and vomiting. Um, but recently, I had the most difficult, one of the most difficult times I've ever experienced while watching a feature film, and it's for an episode in season 5, and the film is called Where the Dead Go to Die, and the episode is sure to be, I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose most of the audience during the episode, not because of anything I do, but because of what the film does.
In a previous interview, you stated that Time Bandits is your favourite film. Is this still true?
Uh-huh.
Why do you like Time Bandits?
I'm a big fan of Terry Gilliam. Time Bandits is one of those horribly rare things, an intelligent and dark children's film. And one thing I like is that when children's media treats children like equals and doesn't talk down on them, and so I really I have a genuine like for children's media that treats children with respect. So Time Bandits is one of the films that does that, and I also it gets bonus points because I watched it as a child and loved it as a child.
Would you say there's a film that you cannot stand, that you hate?
Oh, there's a lot of films I really don't like. Famous examples: Titanic, The Land Before Time, The Matrix. Everyone's got films they don't like. I don't know if I could really say that I can't stand them. It's not a case of if I see a copy of it, I have to throw it out a window or anything. It's just art that I really don't care for.
A lot of your reviews rely on jokes or sketches to be entertaining. Would you say that comedy is a difficult process?
I sometimes do have to take a lot of time and effort to come up with something that would make a particular scene I'm working on funny. Sometimes you hit a brick wall, but generally I can usually get enough inspiration from a film so that it might take a little while, but I can work out what to do. Every film's different. Every review's different. Sometimes I'll put in a joke which I think is just a placeholder, and I never think of anything better for it, but it turns out that the joke that was originally a placeholder that I wanted to replace because I thought it was terrible actually becomes really popular. Like, for the first big chunk of my show, the most popular joke that I'd ever done was in my Land Before Time H review, where this dinosaur comes out and says that they're Spike's mother, and Spike is a Stegosaurus, and this other one is this two-legged water-being dinosaur. I can't remember the name of the species, but she says, "I'm his mother," and then I just then cut to me, horrified, confused reaction, screaming, "What the fuck was his father?" And I thought it was a bad joke when I scripted it. I thought it was a bad joke when I filmed it. I really wanted to think of something better to put in there, but I still, to this day, get people sometimes referencing it at me.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to become an internet reviewer?
Find an area that other people aren't doing. Find ways to differentiate yourself from other people. If you want to be a success, apart from the usual things of needing to be charismatic, writing well, editing well, whatever, you're going to have to do stuff that's also mainstream, which is incredibly difficult to do because the mainstream stuff was picked off years ago. The longer it goes on, the harder it's going to be to get into it, which is really unfortunate because there's a lot of talented people out there who are trying and just not getting anywhere near the amount of success as they deserve. If you really want to do it, do some episodes, keep trying, and hopefully you'll make it to some degree of success. There's plenty of sites who deal with it beyond That Guy with the Glasses. So if you don't get on That Guy with the Glasses, don't worry, there are other sites to try.
What would you like to achieve in the future?
I would not mind being able to make feature films of my own. I would not mind. I have an idea for a Hagen feature film, but I'm not holding my breath, for making that. But if I could somehow move on to doing full films, that would be really cool. Although, do the reviews as a side thing, that would be really cool. But right now, my main thing I would like to achieve is being able to live with my wife. She lives in America, I live in the UK. Because of a mixture of American law and the financial requirements for moving to the UK, we can't be together.
Would you say that your wife is a major influence on your reviews?
She's a major influence in person on what I do and who I am. Though I don't know how much direct influence she has generally in the reviews. If I'm having trouble with a script, I will send her the film, and ask her for notes. She's a font of notes. If you send her a film, she can actually come back with like 10 pages of possible jokes for the film, and that can be a great help. She helped out, things like that with reviews, such as she actually, one of the jokes in the heavy metal review was one of her suggestions, which survived my script into Doug's script and is in the final review itself. It's referring to the Hanover Fist turning into the giant monster and yelling that it's the Law and Order Avengers. It's criminal court with the Hulk. That was one of hers. She is very, very good at coming up with jokes and stuff, and she's very supportive.
So would you call her a muse?
Generally in life, yes. Don't know if in reviews in particular, probably no more than she is, in the rest of my life.
Well, Diamond, thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a little while since I've done any of these interviews. I hope I wasn't too shit.
It was great. I hope my listeners enjoyed this interview. You can check out Diamanda's work at diamandahagen.wordpress.com or Blip TV or thatguyoftheglasses.com. Feel free to also follow her on Twitter at Diamandahagen. I personally believe that Diamanda is a talented, funny and intelligent individual that deserves far more recognition for her efforts. I also apologise for the low quality of this recording. If you'd like to check out my other stuff, then head to jamboree.com. Thank you.